The clock in the living room strikes noon, and I'm still sitting in the armchair staring at the empty wall. The sunlight cuts through the heavy curtains that Agnes chose so carefully when we first moved in. I don't change them, like so many other things in the house. 5 years have passed since she was gone, and I still turn around sometimes to say something to her. My name is Jeremiah Brody. 75 years, 50 of which I've worked as a civil engineer. This house on Magnolia Street in Plantation is one of the last projects I managed before I retired. When construction was completed, I fell in love with the place and decided I wanted to live here. Agnes resisted at first. She thought the house was too big for the two of us. Now it does seem immense for an old man. I get up from the chair, leaning on my cane. My knees aren't what they used to be. When I was young, I could run up to the fifth floor of a building under construction without panting. Now every step is a struggle. I pass the pictures on the wall. Agnes is smiling from each one of them at our wedding, with newborn Ezra in her arms, with the Grand Canyon as a backdrop on our 30th anniversary. Ezra, my only son. The phone rarely rings. It's usually either a commercial or Ezra when he needs something. The last time he called was 3 weeks ago, asking for money for a new car for Virginia. His wife never liked me. She calls me old man and fossil. Thinks I don't know, but the walls in their house are thin and my hearing is still pretty sharp. How much longer are we gonna mess with your dad? I heard her voice when I went into their bathroom on my last visit. The door was ajar and they were standing in the bedroom. He can barely walk, probably going to be senile soon. We've got to get ours before he blows it on the doctors. Quiet, Ezra shushed her. He might hear. So what? Virginia snorted. He's like a purse on legs. At least let him do some good before he passes out. I closed the door quietly and pretended I hadn't heard when I returned to them. Why make a scene? Ezra's all I have left, the only family I have. Though sometimes I think the real family was Agnes and me, and my son has long since become a stranger. There's an old Buick in the garage that I bought when Agnes was alive. She loved that car, said it felt like a rocking chair on wheels. I get behind the wheel and go for a drive. Need to air out both my head and the car. Plantation has changed a lot in the last 15 years. When Agnes and I moved here, it was a quiet suburb with neat houses and well-kept gardens. Now there are shopping centers, office buildings, condominiums everywhere. Many of them I designed or built. I drive around the block and stop at the park. This is where Agnes and I used to walk in the evenings. A group of young mothers with strollers are sitting nearby. They are laughing loudly, showing each other something on their phones. Agnes used to be like that, taking little Ezra in a stroller, meeting other young mothers. I rarely joined them. I was always at work. Maybe that was it. Maybe I didn't spend enough time with my son, and now I'm reaping the rewards? Ezra was born when I was 35. I'd just been promoted to chief engineer at Harrison Associates. Projects, blueprints, meetings, travel. The job took up most of my time. Agnes never complained. She understood that I was building our lives, literally and figuratively. Thanks to this work, we had a spacious house, 2 cars, the opportunity to travel, and savings for the future. The future came, but it didn't bring joy. When Ezra turned 18, we sent him to a prestigious college. I worked without a day off to pay for his education. Agnes and I dreamed that he would become an architect or engineer, continue the family business. Instead, he barely graduated from college with a degree in business administration and took a job with a real estate company. I didn't mind. The important thing was to keep my son happy. But he didn't seem happy. He visited Agnes and me less and less. He only called on holidays or when he needed money. When he brought Virginia into the house, I was glad. I thought she would make him happier, perhaps soften his temper. But Virginia turned out to be a cold and calculating woman. They were married without a grand ceremony in the town hall, without even telling us in advance. We found out after the fact with a dry message. We're married. Virginia is now officially your daughter-in-law. Agnes cried all night. Before she died, Agnes was very ill. Pancreatic cancer, a diagnosis that didn't leave much to chance. Ezra came to visit his mother only twice in the 6 months of her decline. Both times briefly, as if he were doing his duty. After the funeral, he disappeared for 3 months, and when he showed up, he started talking about the inheritance. Have you already decided how you will dispose of Mom's property? he asked without even taking off his coat in the hallway. What estate, Ezra? I couldn't believe my ears at the time. Your mother had no separate property. Everything we have, we got together. You know what I mean? He shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. Ari, her jewelry, her stocks, her savings. Your mother's jewelry is right where she left it, I said quietly. If you want, you can take something to remember her by. As for the rest, we have nothing to talk about. I'm not going to die and divide the inheritance yet. He left with a loud slam of the door. The next time I saw him was not until 2 months later, when he came with Virginia to ask for money for the down payment on the house. I gave them that money, $120,000. Not because they convinced me, but because I hoped that having a house of their own would make them more independent. That hope turned out to be in vain. Over the following years, they came to me for money many more times. It was for roof repairs, for new furniture, for a vacation to relieve stress. I almost always gave them what they asked for, partly out of guilt for not being a good enough father, partly because it was the only way I could see my son. My savings are considerable. In 50 years as an engineer, I've accumulated a decent amount. Prudent investments, managed by my old friend Clive Pennyworth, brought in even more. Since Agnes died, I've kept my expenses to a minimum. I don't need much. Food, utilities, sometimes new clothes when the old ones are completely worn out. Books are my only passion and expense. In the basement, I set up a workshop where I make small wooden models of famous buildings. Many of them stand on shelves in the living room. The Empire State Building, the Sydney Opera House, the Eiffel Tower. Ezra never asked about them. Sometimes in the evenings, I look back through my and Agnes's scrapbooks. Here we are, young, just met at a party at a mutual friend's house. She was a philologist, I was an engineer. She loved poetry, I loved calculus. Opposites attract, as she liked to say. Here's our wedding, modest but happy. Agnes's parents are smiling. My father stands a little apart, embarrassed and proud at the same time. He was a simple carpenter, working with his hands all his life. When I got my engineering degree, he cried with happiness. Unlike Ezra, I visited my parents every week while they were alive. I helped my father with home repairs, took my mother to the doctors when she got sick. Agnes and I never considered it a burden. It was family, our roots. The phone rings, interrupting my memories. Ezra's name pops up on the screen. What could he possibly want this time? There's been silence for the past 3 weeks since our conversation about the car for Virginia. Hey, Dad. His voice sounds unusually cheerful. How are you? I'm fine, thank you, I replied with restraint. Did something happen? Why does something have to happen? There's resentment in his tone. Can't I just call and see how you're doing? You could, I think, but I haven't done that in years. Of course you can, I say instead. No, it's just unfamiliar. Virginia and I thought we should see each other more often, he continues. You're all alone in this big house. You must miss it. Sometime, I confess, but I have things to do. We want to take you out to dinner this Friday night, Ezra says, at the new restaurant, the Côte d'Azur. They say it's got great food. I don't say anything, trying to figure out what's behind it. Dad, are you still here? His voice sounds impatient. Yeah, I am. I'm just wondering why the sudden invitation. Jesus, Dad. Now there's a distinct irritation in his voice. You're my dad. We want to spend time with you. What's there to think about? I agree, although my gut tells me it's not about family. Friday, 7 p.m., Côte d'Azur. We agree to meet at the place. Ezra says he and Virginia will be downtown on business and drive from there. After the conversation, I stare at my phone for a long time. Part of me wants to believe that my son really missed me, that he cares about my loneliness. But the other part, the more realistic part, knows there's some kind of request behind it. Another money for another necessary thing. In the evening, I sit in my studio and work on a model of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a complex structure that requires patience and precision. Agnes always said that's what I'm all about, patience and precision. When I was young, those qualities seemed like advantages. Now I realize that they have also made me too malleable, unable to resist my own son's manipulations. There's a bank statement on the table. The amount in the account is substantial, enough for Ezra and Virginia to live comfortably without working. I often wonder what will happen to that money when I die. I made a will a long time ago. Everything goes to Ezra, just as I promised Agnes before she left. But sometimes I have doubts. Is this really the right decision? Agnes didn't see how their relationship became after her death. She didn't see how her son became more and more distant and his calls more and more self-serving. There is an old leather chair in the corner of the workshop. Agnes bought it at a flea market and restored it with her own hands. She liked to give things a second life. I sit down in it and close my eyes. What would you advise me now, dear? How do I cope with this loneliness and the constant feeling of being used? Of course, there's no answer. Just silence and the ticking of the old clock in the corner. It's late, but I don't feel like going upstairs to the empty bedroom. 5 years have passed and I still sleep only on my side of the bed, as if leaving room for Agnes. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and reach for her before reality hits me with a cold wave. Before going to bed, I go through my closet, wondering what to wear to dinner with my son and daughter-in-law. The navy blue suit I wore to Agnes's funeral? Too somber. The gray pinstriped one I wore to work? Too formal. I end up with dark pants and a blue jacket. Agnes said it was the right color for me. I catch myself thinking that I'm as nervous about this dinner as a boy before a first date. Stupid, of course. But even after all the disappointment, I still hope to rebuild my relationship with my son. I still believe that somewhere deep down inside he loves me and not my bank account. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe Ezra and Virginia really just want to spend time together instead of begging for another paycheck. Maybe. I'm too old for that many maybes. But the alternative, being utterly disappointed in my only son, seems too bitter to accept. Friday morning was surprisingly sunny for November. I woke up earlier than usual, even though in recent years I've been getting up at first light. Old age takes away not only my strength, but also my ability to sleep for long periods of time. Dinner tonight with Ezra and Virginia, and the thought keeps me awake. The usual ritual: coffee, toast, heart and blood pressure pills. Reading the newspaper seems mechanical tonight. My thoughts keep returning to the upcoming dinner. Why did Ezra suddenly decide to invite me? What's behind it? The hope of a sincere desire to repair the relationship fights with the pragmatic certainty that it will be about money. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rings. Ezra, I think, wants to cancel, but the screen pops up with the name Clive Pennyworth, my old friend and financial advisor. "Jeremiah, you old sea-wolf!" His cheerful voice fills the room through the speaker. "How are you?" "Not bad, Clive. How are you?" "Still breathing, so I'm good," he laughs. "Listen, I've got an update on your investment portfolio. That technology company we invested in 3 years ago has just announced a merger with a major player. The stock is soaring. Your 100,000 turned into 375. "That's great news," I say without much enthusiasm. "Aren't you excited?" Clive sounds surprised. "It's a great return on investment." "Of course I'm happy." I try to sound enthusiastic. "It's just, what's the point of having all this money when there's not much to spend it on?" "What about your son?" "He'll always find something to spend it on," Clive says ironically. He's never approved of my generosity to Ezra. "Speaking of him," I say, "he invited me to dinner tonight." "Oh." Clive was silent for a second. "What does he want this time?" "I don't know. Maybe just to have dinner with my dad." Clive snorts. "Jeremiah, you're the smartest person I know when it comes to calculations and designs. But when it comes to your son," he doesn't finish the sentence. "Just be careful, okay? And call me after dinner. I wonder what number he'll give me this time." The day drags on slowly. I decide to go to the barber shop. It's been a while since I've gotten a haircut, and if dinner is really important to Ezra, it's worth looking decent. At 6 in the evening, I start getting ready. I take out the suit I've chosen, iron my shirt carefully. Agnes has always laughed at my perfectionism in this matter. "You iron like you're getting ready for a military parade," she used to say. I miss that little banter, that lightness she brought to our lives. I leave home at 7:30. Better to arrive a little early and wait than be late. The roads are surprisingly clear for a Friday night. I park near the restaurant and walk slowly to the entrance, leaning on my cane. My knees ache more than usual today. Must be the rain. The Côte d'Azur turns out to be much more chic than I expected. Glass facade, uniformed doorman, soft lighting. A marble statue of a sea nymph stands at the entrance. Inside smells of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. The maitre d' meets me at the door. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? Yes, under the name of Brody. Table for three. He checks the list and nods. Yes, Mr. Brody. Your companions have arrived. Let me show you out. I follow him through a room filled with an elegant crowd. Ladies in evening gowns, men in expensive suits. My blue jacket suddenly feels old-fashioned and out of place. Ezra and Virginia are sitting at a table in the corner. They have wine glasses and appetizers in front of them. Dad! Ezra gets up to give me a hug. His enthusiasm seems excessive. You look beautiful. Hello, Ezra. I hug my son awkwardly. The last time we hugged, I think, was at Agnes's funeral. Virginia, it's good to see you. My daughter-in-law smiles strainedly. Likewise, Jeremiah. She doesn't even stand up, just nods. She's wearing a black dress with a deep neckline and diamond earrings that are clearly worth more than the average person's monthly salary. I sit down at the table, and the waiter immediately flies over to me with a menu. It's without prices, which is a bad sign. It usually means that the dishes are so expensive that it's best not to shock the customers early. We took the liberty of ordering wine, Ezra says, raising his glass. This is a Chateau Margaux from 2010. It's a great vintage. I'm not a big wine connoisseur, but even I know that Chateau Margaux is one of the most expensive wines in the world. Something tells me this dinner is going to cost a fortune. And these foie gras canapés are divine, she added, popping a tiny sandwich into her mouth. You should definitely try it, Jeremiah. I take one of the canapés. It's really good, but hardly worth the money they're asking for it. I study the menu, trying to find something more or less affordable, even though I realize I'll still be paying for the whole table. That's the unwritten law of our family meetings. How you doing, Dad? Ezra asks, taking a sip of wine. Is the house okay? No health problems? Everything's fine, I answer succinctly. How are you guys doing? Oh, we have so much going on, Virginia exclaims. Ezra got a promotion at his company. He's now a senior real estate broker. Congratulations, I tell my son. That's great. Thanks, Dad, Ezra smiles smugly. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of opportunity. And a new office, Virginia adds, overlooking Central Park. The waiter approaches to take the order. Ezra, without looking at the menu, orders lobster and filet mignon. Virginia chooses the scallops and truffle risotto. I settle for a medium-rare steak, the safest choice when you don't know the prices. And another bottle of the same wine, Ezra adds. When the waiter leaves, the conversation continues, but not as smoothly. We exchange phrases about the weather, the city news, the new mall that opened near their house. Ezra and Virginia are clearly nervous, avoiding looking me in the eye. Something is brewing, and I'm pretty sure I know what it is. So, I say finally, what's the real reason for this dinner? Ezra looks hurt. What are you talking about, Dad? We just wanted to spend time with you. You're always so suspicious of our invitations. Because there's usually a request for money behind them, I say bluntly. Virginia snorts into her glass. Ezra throws her a warning glance. Well, since you brought it up yourself, he says, there's something we wanted to talk to you about. This is it, I think. Here it comes. We've had some financial difficulties, Ezra continues. Sorry, temporary, of course. What is it this time? I ask, trying not to sound too tired. A new car? Home remodeling? No, Dad, it's more serious than that. Ezra leans across the table to me. Virginia and I have decided to start our own real estate company. Get away from corporate dependency, you know? And we need some startup capital, Virginia puts in. About $500,000. I almost choke on my wine. $500,000? That's the largest amount they've ever asked for. It's a very big decision, I say cautiously. Do you have a business plan? A marketing strategy? A market analysis? Ezra waves his hand. Of course, Dad. I've been in this business for 10 years. I know the ins and outs. With my connections and client base, we can recoup our investment in a year, 2 at the most. Then why don't you go to the bank for a loan? I ask. With a good business plan and your experience, that shouldn't be a problem. They look at each other. Virginia presses her lips together. You see, Ezra looks embarrassed. We don't have the best credit history. Remember that house loan? We got a little a few late payments, and a car loan, Virginia adds as if it's nothing, and some credit cards. Wait, I'm trying to process what I'm hearing. You took out a loan on a house that I gave you $120,000 for a down payment, and you couldn't pay it off? Ezra blushes. There were unexpected expenses, Dad. The renovations came out more expensive than we'd planned. Then Virginia's car got stolen, so we had to buy a new one, which you also bought on credit and couldn't pay off. I finish for him. It's a temporary hardship, Ezra says with annoyance. Everyone goes through it. Not everyone asks their elderly parents for $500,000, I say. You can afford it, Virginia interjects. You have more money than you'll ever be able to spend. It's not about whether I can afford it, I say. It's that you don't seem capable of managing your finances. How can I trust you with $500,000 if you haven't handled the money you've already received? That's when our entrees arrive. They look exquisite. Small portions, artistically arranged on huge plates. Ezra immediately pounces on his lobster, as if the conversation is over. Virginia takes a big sip of wine. Look, Dad, Ezra says with his mouth full, this is our chance to go to the next level, to become independent, to secure our future. Don't you want your son to be successful? Of course I do. That's why I gave you the best education I could afford, and that's why I continue to give you money whenever you ask for it. But $500,000 for a business when you don't even have a decent credit history, I shake my head. That's too risky. Not for you, Virginia snorts. It's not like you're going to get poor. Virginia sets the glass down on the table with such force that the wine spills out. Do you know what I think? She says with obvious irritation. You just don't want us to be successful. You like us to depend on your handouts so you can control us. Ezra throws her a warning look, but she doesn't stop. Shoo, you sit alone in your huge house with your millions, while Ezra and I try to make it through. And instead of helping your only son, you lecture us about financial discipline. She takes another big sip of wine. It's ridiculous. Virginia, calm down, Ezra hisses. No, I will not calm down. She raises her voice and several people at neighboring tables turn around. So, we're out here lecturing him, and he's sitting there like a statue of a commodore, judging us from on high. His own son asks for help, and he refuses. I'm not saying no, I say calmly. I'm just suggesting we think of a more realistic plan. Realistic? Virginia laughs a little too loudly. What could be more realistic than a father helping his son? Or is it too hard for you to spend some of your millions on your family's future? I nod politely, pretending to seriously consider their proposal, but irritation builds inside. It happens again and again. The feigned concern and then the money question. Think of your grandchildren, Virginia continues, even though we all know that they have no children and don't expect any in the near future. Ma son, don't you want to provide for your family's future? Ezra looks uncomfortable but doesn't stop his wife. He calls the waiter over and orders a third bottle of wine without even asking me. I didn't drink much of anything. Alcohol doesn't mix well with my medication. But he and Virginia emptied 2 bottles of Chateau Margaux at an impressive rate. So what do you say, Dad? Ezra takes another sip. Will you help us start a business? I hesitate to answer, cutting into the steak. I need to buy some time to gather my thoughts. I have to think, Ezra. $500,000 is a lot of money. Not for you, Virginia interjects. You've got millions in your accounts. What are you going to do with them? Take them to your grave? Virginia! Ezra shushes her, but without much enthusiasm. What? I'm telling the truth. Your father's sitting on a pile of money he's not spending anyway, and we could use it to build our future. Your future is not my responsibility, I say calmly. You're adults. Of course we are, Virginia snorts. When it comes to money, we're suddenly adults. And when you need help around the house or with a computer, we're your little kids again. I never asked you to help me with the computer, I object. Ah, in fact, I haven't asked you for help in years. What if you had asked? She leans across the table to me. We would have rushed over, wouldn't we, Ezra? My son nods languidly, clearly disbelieving his own gesture. See? Virginia triumphs. We're a family. We take care of each other. I look at them both and suddenly fatigue overwhelms me. Not physical. I'm used to the constant pain in my knees and back. It's a mental fatigue that has accumulated over the years of these family meetings. The waiter brings a dessert menu. I shake my head. My appetite is completely gone. But Ezra and Virginia are enthusiastically exploring the options. Chocolate souffle and creme brulee, Virginia says. And I'll have a strawberry cheesecake, Ezra adds. And a bottle of dessert wine. Something sweet. Ezra, you've already had 2 bottles, I remark. And a third is on the way. Son, we're celebrating, Dad? He's smiling big. Starting a new business. I haven't agreed to finance your business yet, I remind him. But you will, Virginia says confidently. You always do, because you know it's the right thing to do. Her smug tone touches a nerve. Are they really so sure of my weakness? Am I really that predictable? Besides, she adds, taking another sip of wine, you don't have much choice. Who else is going to take care of you when you're old enough? A nursing home? She laughs as if she's said something incredibly witty. Ezra gives her a warning look, but again says nothing. Coward. Always been a coward when it came to confrontation. So was I. Perhaps he inherited it from me. Oh, I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, I say, trying to stay calm. And my finances, too. Of course you are. Virginia rolls her eyes theatrically. That's why you should invest in our business. It's a sound financial decision. If it were a sound financial decision, I reply, the bank would give you a loan. Banks don't understand anything about real business. She waves me off. No, honey, they just look at the numbers and the credit rating. They don't see the potential that we see. And that I'm supposed to see, I add. Exactly. She raises her glass as if she's making a toast. You're not some soulless bank. You're family. The waiter brings desserts and a new bottle of wine. Ezra and Virginia pounce on them with a greed that seems almost obscene. I sit in silence watching this spectacle. Strangely, I feel like a spectator rather than a participant, as if this isn't happening to me, but to some other old man who's had the misfortune of having a son and daughter-in-law. You know, says Virginia, licking the cream off the spoon, we could make you the honorary chairman of our company. A nice plaque on the door, a picture on the website. What do you think? I don't think that's a good idea, I reply. I don't understand anything about real estate. It doesn't matter, Ezra waves his hand. You'll just be a figurehead, a prestigious senior partner, you know. Clients like that kind of, stability, especially with your money behind you, Virginia adds with a smirk. My money stays my money, I say firmly. Iraq, if you want to start a business, you'll have to do it on your own. The smile slides off Virginia's face. She sets her glass down on the table with such force that the wine spills out onto the tablecloth. What do you mean? Her voice sounds dangerously low. I mean, I'm not giving you $500,000, I say. Not now, not later. But you haven't even seen our business plan yet. Ezra's outraged. How can you say no without looking at all the details? Because I know you, I answer. I've seen how you handle money, and I don't believe you can run a successful business. That's not fair, Ezra raises his voice. Just because we've had some financial difficulties. Some? I can't hold back a bitter laugh. You couldn't pay your mortgage, your car loan, your credit cards, and now you want me to give you $500,000? That's crazy. You're just a greedy old man, hissed Virginia. You like to see us poor. You like that we have to come to you for money. If I liked it, I say, I'd give you money in small installments so you'd come back again and again. But I gave you large sums in the hope that you would finally become self-sufficient. Oh, so this was a test? Virginia raises her voice and several customers at neighboring tables turn around. You were testing us? And of course we failed, didn't we? Not good enough for the great Jeremiah Brody? Virginia, please. Ezra tries to reassure her, but she waves her off. No, let her tell the truth. Let him admit that he never thought we were worthy of his money, that he's always looked down on us from his ivory tower. I just wanted you to learn to live within your means, I say, to stop relying on me and start making your own lives. So help us, Ezra exclaims. Give us a chance to start this business. If it's successful, we'll never ask you for a dime again. I've already given you many chances, I shake my head. And every time the result has been the same. You've spent the money and come back for more. Because a couple thousand isn't enough, says Virginia. To really get back on your feet, you need a serious amount of money. 500,000 is what we need. A year from now, you'll come back and say you need another million, I object. This will never end. Virginia looks at me with undisguised hatred. Her eyes narrow and her lips curl into a thin line. You know what, Jeremiah? She says, punctuating every word. We only need you as a wallet, nothing else. And if you won't even fulfill that function, what good are you? I can feel the blood rushing to my face. That shouldn't surprise me. I've always known that's what she thinks. But to hear it out loud in a public place, from the wife of my own son, is quite another matter. Virginia! Ezra finally looks genuinely shocked. Apologize right now. I won't, she crosses her arms across her chest. I'm just telling the truth. Your father's sitting on millions, refusing to help his own son, and he has the nerve to lecture us about fiscal responsibility. The waiter, noticing the raised tones, cautiously approaches our table. Are you all right? He asks with a professional smile. Everything is fine, replies Virginia with a fake sweetness in her voice. Bring us another bottle of wine. And the menu. We're ready to order more. She doesn't even look at me as she places this order. I'm a blank slate, an ATM machine that she expects to just dispense money. Ezra looks uncomfortable but doesn't stop her. When the waiter leaves, he tries to smooth things over. Dad, that's not what Virginia meant. She's just upset. We were really hoping for your help. That's exactly what I meant, Virginia objects. And you think so too. You're just afraid to say so. I'm not, Ezra exclaimed, but his voice sounded unconvincing, even to me. It is, and you know it. Virginia turns to me. You know what your son says about you when you're not around? That you've always been a disgusting father, that you never came to his school functions because you were too busy with your precious job, that you loved your buildings more than you loved him. I look at Ezra, expecting him to refute those words, but he just lowers his eyes. So it's true then, or at least that's what he really said. And you know what else? Virginia continues with a cruel smile. He says you hastened his mother's death by your indifference, that if you'd cared more about her instead of your damn wooden models, she might have lived longer. It's like a punch in the gut. I feel something clench in my chest and a lump in my throat. Agnes, my darling Agnes, does Ezra really think I could have somehow prevented or delayed her death? I was with her every day of her illness, held her hand when she left. And where has he been all this time? That's not true, Ezra mumbles, but too quietly and uncertainly. And now you're sitting here judging us for our financial irresponsibility, Virginia continues. You who failed as a father and as a husband. Who the hell are you to judge us? The waiter brings another bottle of wine and a menu. Virginia grabs the menu and begins to loudly list the most expensive dishes. We'll have oysters, foie gras, truffle risotto. She looks at me defiantly. And a bottle of Dom Perignon. The most expensive one you have. This is too much. All night I endured their insults, their greed, their manipulation. I've endured it because Ezra is my son, my blood. But now something in me is breaking, something that's been holding me back all these years. Enough! I slam my palm on the table with such force that the dishes clink. Ezra and Virginia freeze. The waiter stops too, not knowing what to do. Cancel that order, I tell the waiter, and bring the bill for what's already been eaten and drunk. Yes, sir, he quickly walks away, clearly happy to get away from our drama. I turn to Ezra and Virginia. Their faces express shock. They've never seen me so determined. I've always relented, always compromised, always tried to keep the peace, but not today. I know about everything, I say quietly but firmly. The way you talk about me behind my back. The way you make fun of the old man who part with his money so easily. About how you plan to spend my inheritance when I'm gone. Their eyes widen. They didn't expect me to know that. I know I'm just a wallet to you, and I put up with it because you're my son, Ezra, because I hope that deep down, you still love me, not my money. Dad, he starts, but I raise my hand to stop him. Don't. I don't want to hear any more lies. You both showed your true colors today. I straighten up as far as my old back will allow. From now on, I'm closing my ATM. No more money, no more favors, no more financial support. You can't, Virginia begins, but I interrupt her. What's more, I'm changing my will. I look directly at Ezra. You won't get another dime of my estate after I die. the faces of both of them pale. They didn't expect such a turn. "You can't do this," shouts Virginia. "He is your son, your only heir." "I can and I will," I answer calmly. "It's my money, and I have the right to use it as I see fit." "Dad, wait." Ezra finally looks genuinely scared. "Let's not make any rash decisions. Virginia was wrong to say all those things. She was just upset and had too much to drink." "I'm sure she was being sincere," I reply, "and I appreciate that sincerity. At least now I know exactly where I stand." The waiter brings the bill. I don't even look at the amount, just put my credit card in the leather folder and hand it back to the waiter. Virginia and Ezra sit in stunned silence, unable to believe what just happened. "You're going to regret this," Virginia finally says. "You can't just cut us out of your life." "I'm not cutting you out," I reply. "I just stopped being your ATM. If you want a real relationship, no asking for money, no manipulation, my door is always open." "That's not fair," Virginia's almost screaming. "You're punishing us for being honest with you." "No," I shake my head. "I've just finally realized that giving you money isn't helping you. It means indulging your irresponsibility and greed." The waiter returns with my card and check. I leave a generous tip. It's not his fault our family dinner turned into a battlefield. "I'm leaving," I say, standing up and leaning on my cane. "You can stay and order more wine if you want, but you'll have to pay for it yourself." "You can't just leave." Ezra stands up as if about to stop me. "We're not done talking about this." "I am," I say, "and I'm serious about the will. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow." I turn and walk toward the exit, feeling the stares of the other visitors. We must have put on quite a show, but I don't care. For the first time in years, I feel strangely relieved. Like I've shed a heavy weight I've been carrying around for too long. As I leave the restaurant, I turn around. Ezra and Virginia are still sitting at the table, stunned and pale. My son caught my gaze, and for a moment I thought something like remorse flashed in his eyes. But perhaps it was just a play of light. I step outside, and the cool November air refreshes me after the stuffy restaurant. The sky is clouded over, rain is gathering, but even the thought of impending bad weather doesn't dampen my mood. I feel strangely free. The rain intensified as I drove out of the restaurant's parking lot. Droplets drummed on the roof of my old Buick as if trying to reach me. The windshield wipers creaked back and forth, struggling to keep up with the flow of water. Visibility was almost nil, and I slowed down to a minimum. I should have called a cab in this weather, but the thought of leaving the car in the parking lot and coming back to pick it up tomorrow seemed too exhausting. Besides, I needed to be alone, to think about what had just happened. "We only need you as a wallet." Virginia's words rang in my ears, drowning out even the sound of the rain. I'd always suspected that was the case, but to hear it out loud, to see my son acquiesce, was another thing entirely. It was as if someone had finally pulled the veil from my eyes, and I saw the truth in all its unseemly nakedness. My hands on the wheel were shaking, and not just from the cold. The adrenaline that had surged into my bloodstream during the confrontation was beginning to subside, leaving behind a desolation and a strange, painful clarity. Am I really going to change my will? Cut my own son off from the inheritance I'd always thought was his legal right? Yes, I am. And surprisingly, I don't feel the slightest remorse about it. Only a strange relief, as if I'd finally made a decision I should have made years ago. The drive home took almost twice as long as usual. When I finally pulled up to my house on Magnolia Street, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour. I parked in the garage and just sat in the car for a while, listening to the drops pounding on the roof. I didn't want to get out, to go back to the empty house, where only memories and silence awaited me. But you can't sit in a garage forever. I struggled to get out of the car, feeling my knees aching, a sure sign that the weather wouldn't improve in the next few days. Leaning on my cane harder than usual, I entered the house through the door connecting the garage to the kitchen. The dark rooms greeted me with a resounding silence. I didn't turn on the overhead light, confining myself to the small lamp on the kitchen counter. In its dim light, the house seemed even more empty and huge. Why would a lonely old man need such space? Agnes was right when she said this house was too big for us, but I'd insisted then. I wanted us to live in the house I'd helped to build. Now every empty room was a reminder that I was alone. Without taking off my wet coat, I went into the living room and sank heavily into an armchair. Opposite, on the wall, hung a portrait of Agnes, painted for our 30th wedding anniversary. She was smiling that special smile that was always reserved for me. "What would you say now, dear?" I asked aloud. "Had I done the right thing?" Of course, there was no answer. Only the rain drummed on the windows and the clock ticked on the mantelpiece. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine what Agnes would say. She had always been gentler with me, always found words of comfort, but she was also principled and didn't tolerate anyone trying to manipulate her or hurt her loved ones. What would she say about Ezra and Virginia's behavior? Would she support my decision or advise me to forgive, to give them another chance? The phone in my jacket pocket vibrated, interrupting my thoughts. I pulled it out and saw Ezra's name on the screen. Already, they hadn't even let me drive home and process what had happened. My finger hovered over the answer button, but at the last moment I decided not to pick up. Not now. First, I need to get my thoughts in order, to calm down. The phone stopped ringing, but a minute later it vibrated again. A message. "Dad, we need to talk." That's not what Virginia meant. "She's had too much to drink. Please call me back." I grinned bitterly. Alcohol doesn't create new thoughts. It just removes inhibitions against speaking the ones I already have. Virginia had said exactly what she was thinking, and what Ezra thought, though he didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Another message, this time from Virginia. "Jeremiah, you can't just change the will. We have rights, we will fight." Rights? Rights to what? To money they didn't earn. I shook my head and disconnected the phone. Talking would wait until tomorrow, when I'd have better self-control. I finally took off my wet coat and walked to the kitchen to make tea. Simple mechanical actions always help me calm down. Getting the kettle, filling it with water, putting it on the stove, finding the tea bag, picking up the cup. Each movement is like a little anchor keeping me grounded in reality, preventing me from sinking too deeply into painful thoughts. While the water was boiling, I thought again about what I had said in the restaurant. Do I really want to change the will? To disinherit Ezra from the inheritance that was always meant for him? Was it too harsh a decision made in the heat of emotion? No. I shook my head, pouring boiling water into my cup. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It had matured in me over the years, with every disappointment, every request for money, every cold call on my birthday that lasted exactly as long as it took to maintain decorum. I just finally worked up the courage to admit what I'd known for a long time, that Ezra and Virginia saw me only as a source of money, not as a human being with feelings and dignity. With a cup of tea in my hand, I returned to the living room and walked over to the bookcase. Among the books on architecture and engineering was an old leather-bound photo album. I pulled it out and sat back in my chair. Flipping through the pages, I looked at the pictures that captured our family's history. There's Ezra the baby in the arms of a happy Agnes. Here was his first day of school, a little boy with a huge backpack on his back. Here's him as a teenager, already with that characteristic sullenness that appeared at puberty and never really seems to go away. Here's the college graduation, Agnes and I standing proudly beside my son in his gown and square cap. When did it all go wrong? Was there a specific moment when our relationship began to deteriorate? Or did it happen gradually, day by day, year by year? Could it be that I really was a bad father, as Virginia had implied? Too busy working to attend school functions? Too tired in the evenings to play with my son? But I worked for my family, to provide Agnes and Ezra with a comfortable life, to give my son a good education, opportunities I didn't have. I thought I was doing the right thing, sacrificing time for their future. But maybe it was a mistake. Perhaps it wasn't my provision that Ezra needed, but my presence. However, that doesn't explain or excuse his behavior now that he's an adult. Even if I wasn't a perfect father, that doesn't give him the right to treat me like an ATM, to ridicule me behind my back, to let his wife say things like that. I closed the album and set it on the table. The tea had gone cold, but I took a sip anyway. The bitter taste matched my mood. Suddenly, the house seemed foreign and hostile to me. Too big, too empty, filled with ghosts of the past. Maybe I should sell it, find something smaller, more suited to my current needs. It would be another way to start a new chapter of life, to put the painful past behind me. But those are decisions for another day. Right now, I need to focus on a more pressing matter. The will. I pulled a notepad and pen from my desk drawer. It's old-fashioned, but I've always thought better when I put my thoughts down on paper. I'll call Samuel Dawson, my lawyer, in the morning, but first I need to decide exactly what I want. A new will, I wrote at the top of the sheet. The first clause was obvious. Ezra would get nothing. No house, no money, no investments. But then what to do with all the property? I have no other children, no close relatives to whom I could leave everything. Charity? Maybe. There are a few organizations I've always supported. The Pancreatic Cancer Research Foundation in memory of Agnes, a scholarship program for engineering students, the local animal shelter where Agnes and I sometimes went to volunteer. I wrote these options down, but I didn't feel completely satisfied. There was something else going on in my head, some idea I couldn't quite articulate. The phone I had placed on the table vibrated again. This time it was Virginia calling. I didn't answer, but a minute later a voicemail came through. Against my better judgment, I decided to listen to it. "Jeremiah, this is Virginia." Her voice sounded cold and calculating. "I believe we need to clear the air. You can't just disinherit your only son. It's unfair and perhaps even illegal. We consulted a lawyer and he said we can challenge any changes to the will, especially if they are made at an advanced age under the influence of emotion. Think about it carefully before you do something you'll regret." Threats. Now they were resorting to threats. I shook my head, marveling not so much at their insolence, but at my own blindness all these years. How could I not see what kind of people they'd become? Or maybe they'd always been like this, and I just didn't want to admit it. Another message, this time a text message from Ezra. "Dad, please, let's talk. I know things went wrong today, but we can fix it. Virginia is really sorry for what she said. She was upset and had too much to drink. That's not what we really think of you. You know we love you, don't you?" Love, I grinned bitterly. Love doesn't look like that. Love doesn't demand, doesn't manipulate, doesn't threaten. Love is giving, caring, respectful. I put the phone away and went back to my notes. What to do with the inheritance? Charity was a good option, but I wanted something more. Personal, something that reflected my values, my life, what I believe in. Suddenly it hit me. A scholarship fund. Not just a donation to an existing fund, but the creation of my own, named after Agnes. Scholarships for engineering students from low-income families. To give a chance to those who really want to study and work, who are willing to put in the effort and not just reach out for handouts. This idea filled me with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in a long time. I started sketching out the details, the selection criteria, the size of the scholarships, the structure of the fund's management. Of course, all of this would need to be discussed with lawyers and financial advisors, but the concept seemed right. Glancing at my watch, I was surprised to find that it was well past midnight. I should get to bed. There was a lot to do tomorrow. The first thing was to call Samuel and make an appointment, then Clive to discuss the financial aspects of setting up the foundation. Maybe even find out about selling the house, a decision that no longer seemed as rushed as it had a few hours ago. As I walked up the stairs to the bedroom, I felt strangely light, despite the pain in my knees and back. It was as if I'd dropped a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years, not realizing how much it was weighing me down. The weight of unfulfilled expectations, the false hope that one day Ezra would be the son I dreamed of, not the son he really was. I didn't go to bed right away. First, I went to the dresser, where there was a picture of Agnes, my favorite, the one of her laughing with her head tilted back, flowers in her hair. It was on our honeymoon. We'd gone to a lake in the mountains. She insisted we stay in a small cottage instead of a big hotel. "Why do we need extra people around?" she said at the time. "All I need is you." "I miss you every day," I whispered, touching my fingers to the glass. "And Colonel, I hope you would approve of what I'm about to do." There was no answer, of course, but I thought the smile on the picture got a little wider, as if Agnes had really heard me and agreed. I went to bed as usual, only on my side, leaving room for the ghost of the woman I had loved all my life. Despite the stormy events of the evening, I felt strangely calm. The decision had been made, and it felt right. For the first time in a long time, I had no doubts. Sleep came more quickly than usual, and was surprisingly peaceful, without the restless dreams that had often haunted me in recent years. I awoke at first light, feeling rested and ready for action. The morning ritual was the same as always. Coffee, toast, pills, newspaper. But the feeling was different. It was as if I had finally awakened from a long, troubled sleep and seen the world as it really was, not as I wanted it to be. At 9 o'clock sharp, I dialed Samuel Dawson's number. His secretary at first said he had a busy schedule, but when I insisted on the urgency, agreed to find a window today. Mr. Dawson will be able to see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon, Mr. Brody. Is that okay with you? It was fine with me. I thanked her and hung up. The next call was to Clive. Jeremiah! His voice was as energetic as ever, despite the early hour. How was dinner last night? How much did they get out of you this time? Nothing except for paying for the dinner, I said. And that was the last time. What do you mean the last time? Clive sounded surprised. Did they finally realize that you can't milk a dairy cow endlessly? No, I've finally realized that it's time to stop being a cash cow, I said and recounted the events of last night. Clive whistled. Wow, I never thought you'd finally put them in their place, so what now? I've got a meeting with Samuel at 2 o'clock today. I want to change his will, and there's something else I'd like to talk to you about. The Agnes Brody Scholarship Fund. That sounds interesting, Clive said. Let's meet after your talk with Samuel. Say 4 o'clock at our usual place. The usual place was a small cafe near Clive's office, where we often met to discuss my investments. I agreed and we ended the conversation. My phone showed 5 missed calls from Ezra and 3 from Virginia. I didn't bother to call back. I needed to get my affairs in order first before I could decide if I wanted to continue talking to them at all and on what terms. I spent the rest of the time before my meeting with Samuel putting my papers in order and making more detailed notes about the scholarship fund. The more I thought about the idea, the more I liked it. Not just a way to manage money, but a real legacy, something that would outlive me and benefit me for years to come. Before leaving the house, I took another look at Agnes's picture. I'm not doing this out of revenge, darling, I told her, but because I finally see things as they are. And I thought she smiled back. The meeting with Samuel Dawson went smoothly. The experienced attorney asked all the necessary questions, warned of possible legal complications, and promised to prepare a new version of the will by the end of the week. He expressed neither surprise nor disapproval when I explained why I wanted to disinherit my son. Apparently, he'd seen enough family drama in his long career that anything would surprise him. Just so you know, Mr. Brody, Samuel said as we were ending the meeting, your son may try to contest the new will after your death, especially given your age and recent emotional conflict. I understand, I replied. What can we do to avoid this? First, I recommend that you undergo a medical examination to confirm your capacity at the time of the will change. Second, document in detail the reasons for your decision. And third, if possible, start transferring some of the money to the scholarship fund now, rather than delaying everything until after your death. I agreed with all of the suggestions. I could use the extra precaution, especially with Virginia's threats about lawyers. After my meeting with Samuel, I went to the Old Mill Cafe to meet Clive. He was already waiting for me, sitting at our usual table by the window overlooking the city park. We discussed the financial aspects of setting up a scholarship fund. Clive, as always, was practical and specific. I'll contact several foundations with a similar focus, find out about their structure and operating costs, he said. It's also worth consulting a tax specialist about optimization. We agreed to meet again next week when he would have more detailed information. As I was about to leave, I mentioned that I was thinking of selling the house. Really? Clive raised his eyebrows. You always said you'd never leave. I said a lot of things, I said with a bitter smile. But the house is too big for one person, and there are too many ghosts. Well, if you do decide to go for it, let me know. I have a couple of real estate contacts I trust. Not like your son, he added with a touch of sarcasm. We said our goodbyes and I headed home. As I drove past a small cafe called Lavender Tea, I suddenly remembered that I hadn't seen Delphine Carew for a long time, a woman I'd met in a bereavement support group shortly after Agnes's death. The group had long since broken up, but Delphine and I met here occasionally for tea and conversation. I hadn't planned to stop by today, but something compelled me to park and go inside. Maybe tiredness from an emotional day and not wanting to go back to an empty house. Or maybe a simple desire to talk to someone who would really understand. The lavender tea hasn't changed much in the years I've known it. The same old-fashioned round tables, the same purple curtains on the windows, the same smell of fresh baked goods and, of course, lavender. At one of the tables sat an elegant woman with gray hair gathered in a neat bundle. She was reading a book, occasionally sipping from a small cup. Delphine. I hadn't seen her in almost a year, but she hadn't changed much. Still the same straight back, still the same quiet dignity in her whole appearance. I'd always thought she looked like a British queen, the same understated elegance, the same ability to take a punch. I walked over to her table, leaning on my cane harder than usual, my knees aching after a day of walking. Delphine, mind if I join you? She looked up from her book and smiled, an open, warm smile that always surprised me with its sincerity. Jeremiah, what a pleasant surprise. Of course, have a seat. She gestured to the chair across from me. I was just thinking that I hadn't seen you in a while. I sat down, stretching my legs out under the table with relief. Knees? Delphine asked, noticing my grimace. Yeah, damn weather. Every time it rains, they give me a pain. Try turmeric, she suggested. It helps me with arthritis in my hands. I add it to my tea every morning. The waitress came over and I ordered a black tea with bergamot, my usual choice. Delphine asked for more lavender tea. So, she said as the waitress stepped away, what brings you here today? Just passing through, or did something happen? I'd always appreciated that directness in Delphina. No small talk about the weather or politics, just straight to the point. Something happened, I admit. Quite a lot, to be honest. And I told her everything about the dinner with Ezra and Virginia, about their request for $500,000 for the business, about Virginia's words about the purse on legs, about my decision to change my will and create a scholarship fund. She listened attentively, not interrupting, only occasionally nodding or frowning slightly. When I finished, she was silent for a while, looking out the window at the drizzling rain. Then she turned to me with a serious expression on her face. Ah, you know, Jeremiah, I'm glad you finally did it. Do what? I asked, a little surprised at her reaction. I stopped letting them use me. Set boundaries. She sipped her tea. I went through something similar with my daughter Hazel and her husband a few years ago. I knew Delphine had a daughter, but she rarely talked about her. Now I understood why. What had happened? I asked. Delphine sighed. After Frederick died, I was lost. You remember that time? We were all like that in cheerleading. Hazel and her husband Peter started helping me with my finances. At first I was grateful, but gradually I began to notice that money was flowing out faster than it should. Peter convinced me to invest in several of his business projects, which somehow always turned out to be unprofitable. Hazel was constantly asking for money for home renovations, for a private school for the kids, for exotic vacations to recuperate. She paused, her gaze clouded with memories. When I finally worked up the courage to talk to Hazel, she reacted not very well. Said I was becoming a suspicious old woman, and that she and Peter were only trying to help, that I should be grateful for their concern. Sounds familiar, I sighed. I bet it does. Delphine smiled sadly. Things came to a head when Peter tried to convince me to sell the house and move into a small apartment, to make it easier to take care of myself. Of course, he planned to invest the difference from the sale of the house in his next project. So what did you do? I asked, sipping my tea. The same thing you're doing now. Stopped it. Her eyes gleamed with steely determination. I changed my financial advisor, changed my will, set clear boundaries. Hazel was furious. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. And now we have a polite relationship. We see each other at Christmas and grandchildren's birthdays. I help with college costs for them, directly to the college, not through Hazel or Peter, but the closeness is gone, and I doubt she'll ever come back. She said it with a tinge of sadness, but no regret. Don't you regret your decision? I asked. Not for a second, Delphine answered firmly. You know what I've realized over the years, Jeremiah? That we do our children a disservice by letting them use us. We don't teach them independence. We don't prepare them for real life. We are turning them into dependent, infantile people who will always be looking for someone to solve their problems for them. Her words resonated in me with deep understanding. Isn't that what I've been doing to Ezra all these years? Giving him money when he asked for it, not demanding accountability, not insisting on responsibility. Maybe I was as much to blame for the situation as he was. And what did you do afterward? I asked. After you stopped funding their lives. Delphine smiled, and this time there was no sadness in her smile, only contentment. Started living for myself, Jeremiah. For the first time in years, I signed up for a photography course. Always wanted to learn, but never had the time. I started traveling. Small trips at first, then more. Last year I was in Italy for a month. She took her phone out of her purse and showed me pictures. Delphine against the Colosseum, at the Trevi Fountain in a gondola in Venice. In all the pictures, she looked happy and peaceful. And you're traveling alone? I asked, returning the phone. Sometimes alone, sometimes with friends from the photography club. And last year I met a wonderful woman, Eleanor, on a Mediterranean cruise. Now we often travel together. I watched Delphine carefully, trying to see in her the depressed, lost woman she had been in the support group after her husband's death. Not a trace of it. Sitting in front of me was a confident, full of life woman who was clearly enjoying every day. You know what the most amazing thing is, Jeremiah? She continued. I found that I enjoy my own company. I like deciding where to go or travel without consulting anyone. I like waking up and knowing that the day is all mine and I can spend it however I want. It's a liberating feeling. I tried to envision this kind of life for myself, a life where I decide for myself what to do without looking back at my son's expectations or guilt. A life where I do what I want to do, not what I have to do. It felt both daunting and exciting at the same time. Swuna, I don't even know where to begin, I admitted. All my life I've been working, taking care of my family, fulfilling responsibilities. I'm not sure I know how to live for myself. Delphine covered my hand with hers, a light, friendly touch. Start small, she said. Ask yourself what you've always wanted to do but put off until later. A trip you've dreamed of taking? A hobby you wanted to learn? A book you wanted to write? Start with that. I got to thinking, what did I really want? When I was young, I dreamed of seeing the world's great architectural structures, not just in photographs or in the form of models I made myself, but in person. The pyramids of Egypt, the Taj Mahal, Angkor Wat. Agnes promised that we would go when we retired, but her illness cut short all plans. I've always wanted to see the great buildings of antiquity, I said, especially the pyramids. I studied their construction in college, but I've never seen them in person. You should start there, Delphine nodded. Egypt is an amazing country. I was there 3 years ago, on a group tour for older travelers. It's very comfortable and safe. Do you think I could do it? I asked, absently stroking my knee, which was starting to ache again. At my age and with my ailments? Jeremiah Brody. Delphine looked at me sternly, but with a smile. I'm 73, I have arthritis in my hands and a replaced hip, and I just got back from a hike in Yosemite National Park. If I can do that, you can see the pyramids. I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. You may be right. Maybe it really is time to start living a little for myself. Not a little, but completely, she objected. You've earned it, Jeremiah. After all the years of taking care of others, after all the sacrifices, it's time to take care of yourself. We talked for another hour or so. Delphine told me about her travels, about her photography club, about the new friends she'd made over the past few years. I shared my plans for the scholarship fund and the possible sale of the house. Agwani, I think it's a great idea to sell the house, she said. A new place, a new beginning. I did the same thing after the Hazel situation, sold the big family home, and bought a small cottage closer to downtown. Best decision I could have made. No memories, no ghosts of the past. When we finally said goodbye, it was already starting to get dark. Delphine gave me her phone number and insisted I call her when I decided where to go on my first trip. And don't procrastinate, she said, hugging me lightly goodbye. Life is too short to put off joy for later. I drove home in a surprisingly upbeat mood, despite all the stress of the last few days. Talking to Delphine had changed something in me, shifted some inner lever. If she could start a new adventurous life after 70, why couldn't I? Waiting for me at home was the blinking light of my answering machine, 4 new messages, all from Ezra and Virginia, with varying degrees of remorse and threats. I didn't even bother listening to them all the way through, just deleted them. Tomorrow I'll call Ezra and make my position clear. No money, no financial support. If he wants a real relationship, without manipulation and self-interest, I'll be open to it. If not, well, that's his choice. In the meantime, I had better plans. I sat down at my computer and started looking for information on tours to Egypt for older travelers. Maybe a tour in October, when it's not so hot, and perhaps with a stop in Jordan to see Petra. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. Not just existing day to day, but alive, with plans, hopes, dreams. All thanks to one determined enough at the restaurant and a conversation with Delphine that showed me that life can start over at any age. Perhaps I should bring my camera with me on this trip. And who knows, maybe even enroll in a photography class like Delphine did. Or finally start writing that book on architecture I've been dreaming about for years. The possibilities seemed endless, and it was the most amazing feeling for someone my age. Thank you, Delphine, I thought as I leafed through the pages of tour descriptions. Sometimes all we need for change is to see that change is possible. To see someone who has already traveled that path and found happiness on the other side. The next few months flew by in a whirlwind of change. I signed a new will at Samuel Dawson's office, having previously undergone a full medical examination to confirm my capacity. The bulk of my estate was now to go to establish the Agnes Brody Scholarship Fund for talented engineering students from low-income families. I left a small portion to charity, to the Pancreatic Cancer Research Foundation and the local animal shelter, where Agnes and I sometimes volunteered. I left nothing to Ezra, not even the token amount Samuel had suggested, including to make it harder to contest the will. I was firm in my decision. A son who saw me only as a source of money didn't deserve a dime, but changing the will was only the beginning. With Clive's help, I set up a trust fund and started transferring money there now, without waiting for my death. It had the dual benefits of tax benefits while I was alive, and the assurance that my will would be honored when I died, even if Ezra tried to contest the will. The hardest decision was selling the house I'd helped build, where I'd spent the best years of my life with Agnes. But after talking to Delphine, I realized it was a necessary step. Too many memories, too much space for one person, too many maintenance costs. I hired a realtor, not Ezra, of course, and put the house on the market. It went surprisingly quickly. Big family homes in Plantation were at a premium. In its place, I bought a small but cozy one-story cottage in a quiet neighborhood near downtown. No stairs, no accessibility issues. Perfect for someone my age with bad knees. The move was both painful and liberating. I went through decades of accumulated belongings, deciding what to take with me into my new life and what to leave behind. Much of it I gave to charity. Some of Agnes's things that I had kept but never used, her clothes, her jewelry, her collection of porcelain figurines, I boxed up and left in storage. I couldn't bring myself to part with them completely, but I didn't want them to take up space in my new home, reminding me of the loss every day. The pictures of Agnes I took with me, of course, but now they didn't fill every surface, but were neatly placed in a few key places. I realized it was time to move on, not forgetting the past, but not letting it define my whole life either. Ezra and Virginia had tried to contact me numerous times over the months, first with threats and accusations, then with pleas and assurances of love. I briefly explained my position in one phone conversation. No money, no financial support. If they want a real family relationship, I am open to that, but on my terms and respecting my boundaries. They didn't accept that. Virginia called me a cruel and heartless old man, and Ezra accused me of ruining the family over one stupid fight. I just hung up the phone and never returned their calls again. Surprisingly, it didn't make me feel too sad. It was like I had been ready for this breakup for a long time, and now I was just accepting the inevitable. And then a new chapter of my life began. Traveling. It started with Egypt, just as I had planned. I signed up for a group tour for older travelers, organized by a company Delphine recommended, and to my surprise, she offered to join. I've been there before, but would love to go again, especially with a friend, she said. The trip exceeded my expectations. The pyramids, which I had studied on blueprints and only seen in photos, proved even more impressive in person. Standing at the foot of these colossal structures, built thousands of years ago without modern technology, was almost a mystical experience for an engineer like me. Delphine turned out to be the perfect traveling companion, energetic but not pushy, ready for adventure, but also understanding of the limitations of our age. She photographed everything around her with her professional camera, and thanks to her, I too began to look at the world through the lens, noticing details that had previously escaped my attention. After Egypt, it was Jordan with its incredible Petra carved right into the rocks, then Greece with the Acropolis and ancient temples. Each place opened a new page of architectural and engineering history for me, filling me with admiration and inspiration. Delphine and I didn't plan to travel together permanently. It just happened. After Greece, we decided it made sense to visit Rome and other cities in Italy. Then Spain with its Moorish palaces and Gothic cathedrals. Gradually, we developed our own rhythm, our own traditions, our own understanding of each other's space. Our relationship was comfortable and relaxed. We were not romantically involved. Both of us were faithful to the memory of our departed spouses. But we were friends, companions, people who enjoyed each other's company and shared a love of exploring the world. Between trips, I would return to my new home, which gradually became truly mine. I set up a small workshop in the garage where I continued to make models of famous buildings, now not only from drawings and photographs, but also from my own impressions and snapshots. This hobby, which had always brought me joy, now took on a new meaning and depth. I also started writing, first just travel notes for myself, then more structured essays on the architecture of different cultures and eras. Delphine, after reading a few of them, convinced me to start a blog. "You write engagingly and knowledgeably," she said. "It should be read by more than just me." To my surprise, the blog started gaining popularity, especially among architecture and engineering students. They appreciated my experience and practical perspective on things that textbooks often describe dryly and theoretically. Some even wrote to me, asking me questions and sharing their projects. This unexpectedly became another source of joy and meaning in my life. The Agnes Brody Scholarship Fund officially began a year after the change of will. I decided not to wait until after my death to see the results. The first scholarships were awarded to 5 students, 3 young men and 2 young women chosen by a committee that included engineering professors from a local university and myself. Meeting these young people, full of enthusiasm and ideas, was one of the most exciting moments of my life. I saw myself in them as a young man, with the same passion for designs and solutions, the same desire to build something meaningful and lasting. But unlike me, they didn't have the financial backing that would allow them to fully focus on their studies. And now I could give them that opportunity. One of the scholarship recipients, a girl named Leah Norton, particularly touched me with her story. She grew up in a single-mom household, worked nights to help pay the bills, and still managed to maintain excellent grades. Her project, an affordable housing system for low-income families using sustainable materials, was not just technically perfect, but reflected a deep understanding of social need. These were the kind of students I wanted to help. About a year and a half after our fight at the restaurant, when I had just returned from a trip to Japan, this time without Delphine, who was with her grandchildren, Ezra showed up on the doorstep of my new home. He looked ragged and gaunt, not as dapper as before. I invited him in, offered him tea. He sat on the couch in the living room, nervously rubbing the sleeve of his once expensive but now shabby jacket. You look good, Dad," he said, looking me over. It was true. The traveling and the new life had really transformed me. I've lost weight, gotten a tan, and moved around more, which has helped even with my sore knees. Much better than the last time I saw you. "Thank you," I replied. "And you look tired. Is everything okay?" Ezra sighed and lowered his eyes. "Honestly, no. Virginia and I are getting a divorce." That didn't surprise me too much. Their marriage had always seemed based more on mutual benefit than love. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and it was true. Despite everything that had happened, I didn't wish my son unhappiness. "And that's not all," Ezra continued. "I lost my job. The company downsized and I was one of those laid off. I haven't been able to find anything suitable in 3 months. I've been waiting to see what would happen next. A request for money? Another attempt at manipulation? Yeah, I'm really sorry about what happened between us, Dad, he said, finally looking up. About the way Virginia and I treated you. It was wrong. You deserve better than that. I watched him carefully, trying to see if he was sincere or just playing another game. I found out about your scholarship fund, he continued. Sir, one of my former clients is a professor at the university, and he told me, it, it's a great idea. Mom would be proud. At the mention of Agnes, something shook in me, but I still remained cautious. Why are you here, Ezra? I asked him bluntly. He took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. A real apology. I ask for a second chance. Not for money, he added quickly, seeing my skeptical look. For a relationship. A real father-son relationship. I realize you probably won't change your mind about the will, and I'm not asking you to. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to lose the only parent I have left. I stared at him for a long time, trying to read the truth in his eyes. Was it sincere, or just another strategy, now that direct demands and threats hadn't worked? Ezra, I finally said, I want to believe you. I really do. But you have to realize that the trust you've broken can't be rebuilt with one conversation or one apology. It takes time, consistent action, proof of sincerity. He nodded, lowering his head. I know, and I'm ready for it. Ready to prove that I've changed, that I really care about my relationship with you, not your money. I've decided to give him a chance, but with clear boundaries. Okay, we can start small. Maybe weekly lunches. Just talking, getting to know each other. No asking for financial help, no manipulation. We'll see where it goes. Ezra agreed, and we arranged to meet the following Sunday at a neutral place, a small cafe near my new home. I wasn't sure if he would come, but he did. And the next week too. And the week after that. Our conversations were awkward, with long pauses and careful topics. But gradually, week by week, something began to change. Ezra told me about his job search, his fears and insecurities. I shared stories about my travels, about the scholarship fund, about the new life I had built for myself. Not once did he ask for money. Not once did he hint at a will. When I offered to help him with his job search through my old contacts in the construction industry, he initially declined. I'll have to handle it myself, he said. It was something new, something I'd never seen in him before, a desire to stand on his own 2 feet. I don't know if it was a real, deep internal shift or just an adaptation to new circumstances. Time will tell, but I decided to give him this chance, not out of naivety or weakness, but out of the conscious choice of a man who had finally gained control of his life and could afford to be magnanimous. Today, I turned 77 years old. I'm celebrating my birthday in a small Italian restaurant with Delphine, Ezra, and a few new friends I've made over the past 2 years, the members of the photography club I joined at Delphine's insistence, and the first 2 Agnes Foundation Fellows who have already graduated and started their careers. Ezra brings a cake he baked himself, another new hobby he's mastered in recent months. It's not perfect, a little crooked on the side with uneven frosting, but it's made with care, and you can feel it in every piece. As I blow out the candles, Delphine asks me what wish I made. I can't tell you, I smile. Otherwise it won't come true. But the truth is, I didn't make any. Not because I don't believe in wishes or the magic of candles, but because in this moment, surrounded by people who truly care about me, doing things that bring me joy and meaning, I feel like I've already gotten everything I could have wished for. Life isn't perfect. My relationship with Ezra is still fragile, still in the process of recovery. My knees still hurt on rainy days. I still miss Agnes every day. But I've finally learned to live in the present, not the past or the future. I've learned to appreciate what I have rather than grieve for what I don't have. And most importantly, I learned to say enough when necessary, to set boundaries, to stand up for my dignity, to not let others take advantage of me. It was a hard lesson that came too late. But as Delphine says, better late than never. Looking at the people around the table, listening to their laughter and conversations, I think about how one decision, one firm enough in a restaurant 2 years ago changed my entire life, freed me from being an ATM, and allowed me to become the person I was always meant to be, a person with my own desires, dreams, and the right to happiness. My story doesn't end here. Next month, Delphine and I are flying to India to see the Taj Mahal. Then perhaps China with its Great Wall. The world is huge, and I've finally started to explore it. Agnes, I'm sure, would approve. She has always wanted happiness for me. As dinner ends and we head outside, Ezra lingers to speak to me privately. "Thanks for giving me a second chance, Dad," he says quietly. "I know I didn't deserve one." "Everyone deserves a second chance," I reply, "but not everyone gets one. Use yours wisely." He nods and hugs me. A real hug, not the formal touch we exchanged before. I hug him back, feeling a strange mixture of hope and caution. We're still on the road to a real relationship, and it's not going to be an easy road. But at least now it's a real path and not the illusion I've maintained for so long. Delphine is waiting for me by her car. She's going to give me a ride home, as she does after our outings together. As I get in the car, I look over and see Ezra still standing on the sidewalk watching us follow. He raises his hand in a parting gesture, and I do the same. "Is everything okay?" Delphine asks, noticing my pensive expression. "Yeah," I answer. "I'm just thinking about how strange life is. Sometimes you have to lose something to find something more valuable." "Philosopher," she smiles, starting the car. "Save that thought for your blog." And I smile back, feeling deeply grateful for this new chapter of my life that began with the word enough.